All right, everyone, I've got to weigh in on something here, and I got to take exception to something that Trump's been saying in the last 24 hours. Now, I understand with the New York attack, people, their immediate response is, well, string this person up. Trump, though, is the president of the United States. He should not be weighing in on a criminal case that has not yet actually gone to trial. Look, you've got someone who is, let's say that we're certain that Saipov is the one that conducted the terrorist attack, and we are. He still gets his day in court. That's the way that the U.S. justice system is meant to work. The problem with Trump coming out and saying, well, give him the death penalty, isn't a jury pool potentially going to be tainted if you're doing a civilian trial? Now, this person is a legal resident. Not a full citizen, but on a visa, a legal resident. We may not like the fact that there are people that are here on a diversity visa, sort of a Herbert Walker, Chuck Schumer, neolib, neocon diversity program. We may not like that fact, but he is here legally. He has certain legal protections. One of those is a fair public trial. He hasn't gotten that trial yet. A jury has to be assembled for that. Where are you going to find an unbiased jury? You're going to have to, at the very least, you have to move venues to the middle of buttfuck nowhere to find 12 people that aren't aware that the President of the United States has called him out and said, yeah, we should just kill him. Bring back the death penalty for this case. I think New York doesn't have one. Didn't they abolish the death penalty? And at first, it was like, oh, well, maybe we'll put him in Gitmo. It's not clear that legally speaking you can actually do that. You can't just unilaterally, you can't get around the idea of the right to a fair trial for someone who has been imprisoned on U.S. soil and is a legal resident or a citizen. You can't get around their legal protection in legal proceedings as far as a trial goes, a trial by their peers, a trial that is fair and public and speedy, expeditious, and not burdensome to them. You can't get around that just by unilaterally saying, well, they're an enemy combatant, so we can just give them a military tribunal. Now, didn't we all cry foul? I think people on, the general anti-left. Didn't we cry foul when Obama assassinated a U.S. citizen on foreign soil for being suspected of terrorist activity? Again, without a trial. Now, that was on foreign soil. You could make more of an argument for the ability of the U.S. government to kill a U.S. citizen or resident on foreign soil. Because if they're engaged in some sort of combat within your mission parameters, you may not even be able to prevent them from being killed. It might be just collateral damage because they're hanging out with ISIS or something. This is a person, though, who was taken alive after allegedly, and it remains allegedly until the trial, for legal purposes. We may know that he's the one that's responsible. He's still got to be declared guilty and sentenced before the legal system, before the government can do anything insofar as going beyond saying, hey, it's alleged that he conducted a terrorist attack. It's alleged that he rammed some people with his truck and killed 8 people. We may know that to be the fact. We may have video footage. We may have 1,000 witnesses. We may have him saying, yeah, I'm proud of what I did. Haha, it was pretty great at the time. Okay, you've got literally everything lined up. Then send him to trial. It should be fairly straightforward and simple then, wouldn't it? As for Trump weighing in on it, that's going to be used. The fact that Trump is speaking about it is going to be used by the defense to say, hey, there's no way we can get a fair trial. They'll appeal it into the ground for years and years to come, and he'll get to come out and talk to everybody over and over and fucking over again and get more and more attention because of the fact that Trump has weighed in on it. Now, the President of the United States should know, no politician should weigh in. They should condemn the fact that there was an attack. As far as the legal proceedings, anything to do with sentencing, anything to do with trial, anything to do with any of that stuff, remain silent. Because otherwise it's going to be used by the defense. I'm not sure why Trump thought it was a good idea to do this. It's probably worse to say send him to Gitmo, though, because then that raises the specter that the U.S. government would take someone captured on U.S. soil who is legally here. We may find that regrettable, I certainly do, but was legally entitled to physically be there at the time, and declare them a combatant and not actually afford them their right to trial. I think that that's legally wrong. I think it's unconstitutional. It sets a terrible precedent. And if Obama were to have done such a thing, every single person who will agree with Trump here for partisan reasons would be crying foul. Let's be completely honest. I'm going to oppose it either way. Trump, just because Trump is better than Obama doesn't mean that his administration suddenly magically gains my trust on such an issue. Because what if someone else in government wants to do the same thing? Well, Trump, you may trust his judgment, think he's great. Okay, do you trust the rest of the people there in D.C.? Probably not if you support Trump, honestly. You probably support him less than his ideological opponents do. So no, I don't think Trump should be weighing in on this. It's a bad idea, because then his opponents as well, they come out and they point out all these things. And they go on the attack. What I'm saying is that it's just a bad idea. I don't think Trump is doing this for particularly shifty reasons, but it's still ill-advised for him to do so. It's not going to gain him anything. Okay, he looks tough on terror, but who thinks that Trump is soft on terror? The right response was what he did today, and he said thereafter, he's like, well, we're pounding ISIS extra hard right now in retaliation. That's a good thing to say. Your core fans like it. A lot of the centrists, even if they pretend otherwise, they like that message. It doesn't interfere with the legal system. As far as I know, there's no significant number of Americans who oppose attacking ISIS forces. I think that most people don't, even a lot of libertarians don't have a problem with that. Because it's like, well, it's a non-state actor. Most of these states don't really care if we attack them. We operate with impunity insofar as we're doing that, as long as we're not dicking around with like the FSA or Al-Qaeda or the Taliban or something. Okay, that's fine. Weighing in on the trial proceedings that will come and saying, well, give him the death penalty. Well, you haven't sentenced him yet. You haven't actually given him his day in court, despite the fact that he's a goofball and a terrorist and an evil person. Doesn't negate the fact that he has constitutional rights. That's the same fucking argument that's used by neoliberals towards so-called Nazis, which means anybody who's not a neoliberal, including some progressives, oddly enough. Either they're a Nazi or they're a Russian asset, so they're not afforded the First Amendment. Well, that's wrong. They dissent against the establishment, therefore no Fourth Amendment protections. Well, that's unconstitutional. It's not the way that it works. Those rights don't magically go away because you're offensive or because someone else finds you to be unappealing in the message that you give out to the world on social media. Likewise, just because someone is a terrorist, which Saipov almost certainly is, admittedly is, in a documented manner looking at video evidence is, doesn't mean you don't take him to court and give him a trial. You got to give a fair trial. It doesn't matter how bad the case is. We go down a very, very dark path, down a very, very bad, slippery slope, when we determine that there is anything under the sun for which the right to trial should instantly be negated. Because it would open a can of worms. What you would have is that anyone could be framed for such an unforgivable crime and be essentially jackbooted into a cell, never talk to anyone a fucking again, and they don't even get the chance to defend themselves, even if the charges are spurious. In this case, we may know that it happened the way that they say it happened. Saipov killed a bunch of people. He still gets his day in court. That can't be negated. Declaring him an enemy combatant would be a terrible, terrible idea. And it'd be challenged by every legal group in the country. It would never prevail. They would never be able to actually declare him a combatant and make it stick. It would never work. It would become probably Trump's worst moment. Because Trump, even if he weren't the one making that declaration, even if he's not the one doing the prosecuting, even if he were to take a total hands-off approach, he would be the one blamed. And he probably would end up facing significant repercussions in public opinion as it drags on and on and on. As is, the fact that he's weighed in on it is going to make Saipov's attorneys say, well, the president of the U.S. tainted every possible jury pool. How can we get a fair trial? So when he's inevitably found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment, which is what will happen, or 40 years to life, or 10 concurrent life sentences, whatever they sentence him with, he's going to appeal. As I said, well, it wasn't a fair trial. The jury all knew that the president was calling for him to hang from the gallows. Well, what are you going to do? How can you even physically charge a person if you can't find a jury pool that's untainted? You know how difficult it would be if it weren't for the fact that he were a mass murdering lunatic? If it were for any lesser crime, he'd probably have been released by now. The prosecution would have thrown their hands up and said, well, there's no way we can prosecute this because the president weighed in on it. The president declared him guilty before any jury was convened. That's a problem. That won't happen. But they will try to make that argument probably. And then they'll go to like the ACLU and they'll have them talk about it too. Oh, the president shouldn't talk about this. Which he shouldn't. It was ill-advised. That's about all. Peace out.